Hey everyone, thank you guys for tuning in to another show of the Optimize on Your Health podcast. I am here with Elena and Sommer from Foster 360. We're going to learn a lot about Foster 360. We're going to learn a lot about trauma. We're going to learn a lot about the community work. We're going to learn a lot about Sommer and Elena's personal lives as well and how they got into this work. They are both members of our Optimize community. We've also done some work with Foster 360. So we're going to talk through that and how cold water therapy and infrared saunas and compression and breath work and sound healing and meditation and all of those things that are gaining so much popularity today are actually starting to be integrated into the work that you guys do, which is amazing. And I think that's relatively new because most people are probably using very traditional talk therapy types of approaches, which is great. But you guys are basically doing things way out of the box, doing things from a different angle, and actually incorporating some biohacking types of techniques to help the people who are part of Foster 360. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys for taking the time to be here with me today to learn more about you.
Thanks, Michael. We're really excited to be here too. And we love Optimize and can't say how grateful we are for everything that you guys have helped us with.
Great. Well, we love working with you guys. Yeah, we love working with you guys. It's been an interesting, it's just been a unique type of setting. It's not something that we, built the place on and thought we would be doing. And then all of a sudden you guys came into the picture and kind of sharing, hey, this type of work could be really good for Foster 360. And then when we did the first one, it was a big hit. And now we've obviously have done many. And I believe you guys got attracted to Optimize because of Elena's relationship and old-time friend, my business partner, Jesse Meringue. So you guys know each other from the boxing community, martial arts community. So maybe we can start there and just talk a little bit about, your story and how you went from basically boxing to foster care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Jesse. He's been a good friend for a long time. And he definitely always brings a smile to my face every time I think of him. So my background is boxing. I did mixed martial arts as well, and that's how I met Jesse. But I had 2 world titles in boxing and a world title in mixed martial arts. Usually Sommer does this all for me. So
I do. So here's what she's already leaving out. First female to get a world title in boxing, and then first person to switch from boxing to MMA and get a world title.
Oh, amazing.
So very impressive.
Yeah. And I got to be in a couple Hall of Fames for boxing, which is really exciting. But once I stopped boxing, I got into mixed martial arts, joined the team with Jesse. And Jesse actually helped me with all my takedown defense because wrestling is his background. And so he really helped a lot. And then I met my husband, who is also good friends with Jesse at that gym at Arizona Combat Sports. And that was my passion. So I did it. I fought from 14. I grew up here in Phoenix. I went to St. Greg's and St. Mary's, and community was always something that I was very interested in and very much a part of. Then once I started boxing, I went to Vegas because I always say, and I've heard other people say, right, if you want to be an actor, you go to LA, but if you want to be a fighter, you go to Vegas. And there really is a lot of opportunity out there. So I went to UNLV because it's the college out there. And it really just took off. I worked really hard. I was in a world where I really was the only female almost all the time. I loved the challenge. I was definitely motivated by proving people wrong. It was, I walked into gyms constantly where, older men and the males in the gym will look at me and be like, who the heck is, this girl? Who does she think she is? She's going to come in here. And so then I'd spar all the guys and I'd beat them up or at least stand toe to toe, but usually beat them up.
Nice.
And it was like gaining a real respect. I never had people's respect right off the bat ever because they never thought I could get by looking at me. And so to be able to gain respect through like action and through things I was doing and who I really was such a great experience for me. And I really learned so much through that world, and it definitely made me who I am for sure. And of course, all things that sports teach you. I'm a big advocate for sports because you do learn goal setting and hard work. And it's just really from the field, if you're a soccer player, a football player, or the ring where I was, into the real world. It's just such a great transition of like mentality of how to be successful and how to get things done. So
and what attracted you to boxing? Like you said, you started at the age of 14. You grew up here in Phoenix. What ultimately got you involved in, I want to go and punch people in the face?
Right. Yeah, I know. And also, so another thing, punch people in the face.
Yes, please tell us.
I always loved sports. I grew up with sports. My family loved sports. So I played every sport. I loved being aggressive, but I also loved being a female. I loved wearing dresses. And so I did do all sports. And then I had a friend who invited me to their kickboxing gym, and I went, and I fell in love with it instantly. And as an athlete, whatever you do, you compete. So I competed right away, and I just took off from there. I always say it fit me like a glove, which is funny because it was boxing, but just, it was like you had to be in the best of shape. And it was such a challenge in that way. And so I loved that part of it. And also, I just wasn't scared of getting hit. Like, people are always like, you gotta stop. I was really bad at defense when I first started because I don't know why, but it didn't scare me and it didn't hurt me. And so I learned a lot about myself in that. And so I learned defense along the way. But it was just perfect. And it was just me, it was me and all the work that I did leading up to it. And I just excelled in it and had a lot of help along the way. But that's how I got into it. Just someone invited me, so I went, and that kind of describes a lot of my life of just taking opportunities, no matter what it was, and never making decisions out of fear, which has really helped me a lot.
And what was your proudest moment in your fighting boxing career? Like, what was the point where you were just so happy with the outcome, with where you were at? At what stage were you at the top of your game in your fighting career?
So there's definitely a lot. It was great to be really a pioneer in female sports at the time. And it was before social media, so I can't even imagine with that being around. But I got to be in Ring Magazine a lot, where they would feature me. And Ring Magazine's a really popular boxing magazine, and females were never in it. So to get to be talked about in it was really neat for me. I got to talk into a lot of women started boxing in the Philippines. I got to be a part of talking to the government in the Philippines about the importance of that, and even England. So I got to watch all those things and be a part of it. But one of my probably biggest fights was in Germany, where I fought their superstar. She was making millions of dollars, while back home, 5,000 was really the biggest purse we were making. And she was on their HBO. So I went out there, and no one ever beat their German superstar. But I went out there and I really believed in myself. And I had a great fight. It was an awesome fight. And they gave me a draw. They said draw afterwards, and you should have seen her face. She knew she lost, and the whole crowd erupted in boos, it was like a Rocky movie, because that's their superstar. And of course they're not going to like me because I'm not from there, but they found it in their hearts to be like, no, this is wrong.
Wow.
So it was kind of a magical moment of how the heck did this happen? To be able to capture their hearts was really neat and unheard of. And so I went back, but that fight was heard about all around the world and written about, and just doing that. And so getting to really be the first female to break ground in a male world was really a great thing for me. And just proving people wrong was always something that I love to do without having to speak it, but actually just the action of it. And there's a lot of other great fight moments that I had, and even getting into MMA. Randy Couture, knew me because I lived in Vegas, and he actually is the one who got me into MMA. So that was a really neat.
He's a big name.
That was a really neat world to get to be in, and it was awesome because I always got to stay who I was, and that was really important to me too. I have a lot of morals. I still do. And I got to be in this world where there's a lot of partying and a lot of things you could do to get in a lot of trouble, and probably, could have made life easier for me. But I so often got to really face who I was and like prove who I was over and over again, which was really powerful for me. I really found a voice in it. I'm not going to talk about every single situation, but boxing and MMA, it's not an easy world to be in.
No.
There's a lot of people jumping over, dollar bills to get pennies. So people are there to get fast money. People are there to do things they probably shouldn't. So it can be a tough world. And I was able to navigate with my family behind me to always be true to myself.
I had no idea what an accomplished fighter you were. Thank you for sharing that. I just, what an amazing experience to travel and be able to go to Germany and to fight on that sort of stage and to have that sort of response from not only the crowd, but then obviously the world after who covered the fight. So congratulations. That's an amazing experience. And I'm going to love to know how that transition came to Foster 360 and the type of work that you're doing now. But I would love to know more about Sommer and a little bit about your background and where you're from, and then ultimately how you got involved in Foster 360, and then really share with the group what is Foster 360 once we get there. And I would love to learn more about all the work that you guys are doing. I know some of the work that you guys are doing, but really I think I'm just scratching the surface. So the mic is yours, Sommer.
We're just scratching the surface in some ways too. So I think we're in it together.
Nice.
So I grew up in Wisconsin until I was about 13. My family has a unique background. I actually have a lot of family members who are part of carnivals and events. So growing up, we moved to Arizona. I lived in Ahwatukee, grew up there, but my summers and my weekends were spent traveling around the country and doing games and rides and different things, and just providing entertainment to people. So it's always interesting how I see my life weaved into everything I'm doing, because I really believe everything touches everything. And so that was a very unique way to grow up for me, and to meet lots of different people from all different walks of life, because I think it's easy to kind of stay in our bubble. And then that motivated me to really want to help people, because I saw a lot of injustices as I traveled, and even the people who worked for my family, they all had a story. And so I was really motivated to look around and go, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And I started out working in trauma for brain injury. I worked at Barrow Neurological Institute on and off for about 7 years, and got to do some really cool work with concussion, brain injury, and just help people who, went through that and find ways for the community to support them and support the care. How do you provide the same level of care for someone who makes $1 million to someone who makes $20,000 a year? So that was a really cool process I got to be a part of. And I got to study under a really well-known neuropsychologist. And she's a big reason why I know a lot of the things I know today. So I'm so grateful for that. And then on a personal level, I didn't really have childhood trauma, even though I'd love to say I did sometimes. Like, I want my parents to know they made my life hard, but it's not true. And so as an adult, I got married, and unfortunately found myself in a pretty abusive marriage, lots of abuse and lots of trauma for me. And when I was going through that time, I just was rethinking my entire life, kind of like, what am I doing? Who am I? Because a lot of my identity was wrapped up in my marriage and in the life I was leading, and found a local church. I did not really grow up in the church as a kid. And I just went because I just felt so low. And from there, I just fell in love with this idea of Jesus and radical love. Like, what does it look like to radically love people into their wholeness? And that no matter what's happened in your life, it can change. And so from there, not having a background in theology, not going to school to be a pastor, being a divorced female, the church I was a part of, which was a mega church in the Valley, saw how I led as a volunteer and how I interacted with people, and asked me if I wanted to work at the church. And so I became a pastor for about 3.5 years. And that journey took me into a journey of peacemaking. There's an organization called Amplify Peace that I got to work with. And we really we took a trip over to the Middle East and got to sit with individuals, Israelis and Palestinians, and hear how they weren't relying on the government to fix the conflict, but how as people, they were sitting across the table from each other. And that just wrecked me in all new ways of like, how have I not seen that there's two sides to every story? How have I lived in my backyard and never worried about what was going on across the street? And so I got to take this course called A Nonlinear Approach to Peacemaking by an individual who does a lot of peacemaking work in the Middle East. And it changed my life. One of the questions he asked was, what do you want to give your life to? And that made me, during COVID, just with everything, just the whole world just kind of stopping, or what felt like it stopped, me to just question, like, am I supposed to be a pastor? What am I supposed to do with my life? And from there, I just quit with no plan and found myself in the office of Foster 360. And that's just kind of been my background and my journey. I've always been doing things around trauma, around helping people. What I had one of the lowest points in my entire life, going through the abuse and trauma that I experienced, and not feeling like I was worthy of anything or anyone's help. And so I just kept clinging to this idea as learning about peacemaking and reconciliation, and how do I find my wholeness uniquely for me? And then how do I help others walk through it? And that concept just kept changing my viewpoint on what I wanted to do in my life.
So Elena, you were already involved with Foster 360 before you met Sommer.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys met through Foster 360.
Yeah.
And you guys have formed a team. So, all right. The power team.
Yeah.
You guys actually complement each other so well. You guys bring such different perspectives and talents to the people that you serve, based on what I know about your stories, and just, of course, the type of work that I've been able to witness in your connection with Foster 360. So I would love to know what it just, for myself to deepening my understanding, and anyone who's listening to this, what is Foster 360?
Sure. So Foster 360 is a program that works with aged out foster youth, but we always start out with some numbers because they're pretty dismal. In Arizona, 900 young adults age out of the foster system each year. So they turn 18, essentially, is what that is. 50% of those young adults will become homeless within 2 years. 20% right away are homeless, but 50% of them within 2 years. And so that number has been the same number for way too long, and change hasn't happened. And so for us, we really want to create change. And so what we have is we have apartment buildings, and we call it transitional living. So we're a program first that has housing. So we're not just housing. We really are a program first, and I'll explain that, and I'll have Sommer explain it too, because she explains it very well. But so they come to us, and most of them are homeless when they come to us. I mean, some of them have been living out of their car or couch surfing, or really just out of park. And they're referred over to us. And we like to think, or we know that our program is very different, because there really hasn't been any transitional housing in Arizona for the aged out foster youth that has worked. They're in and out all the time. And so we didn't really have a program to replicate. So we've really got in this space. We knew we had to have housing, because you can't have a job or go to school if you don't have kind of a central place to go to, or that safety. So that's really number one. But when they're in that housing, how do you work with them to really make them and think of them as whole people? And all young adults who face foster care, they've all gone through trauma. That is something that they've all done.
And it's complex trauma. Yeah. So it's not usually a single event. It's multiple events continuously happening with not a break.
And we always like to say trauma is trauma. So there's no comparing trauma, right? But we can say, if you could think of the most horrible things that could happen to children, they've happened to the young adults we work with. And that's a really tough thing. But what we do is we work with them on their trauma, and that's not happening anywhere else. And so when I say that, we're really working on, and this is where Sommer really is the person who does it, because she really added that part. We know what being trauma informed is, right? I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, trauma, it's this, it's that. But how do you help people with it? Like, how do you get them? And that's the beautiful thing, is because trauma does affect your brain in such a way where you're always in that fight or flight mode. And so, which is really great if a bear is running after you, for you to be in that, or if you're boxing, right? But not in your everyday life. And so it's a matter of creating new neural pathways, and you can change it. You can change the way that your brain works. And so that's what Sommer does, is she really helps the young adults. One of the things she does, she really helps the young adults with working on their trauma. And so it's, starting with safety, working on their nervous systems. And I just, in a big way, helping them to really love themselves and believe in themselves. And then we add in all that other stuff that everybody else does. But we've, tried to really work with the best out there. So we work with work, education, life skills, all those things. But if you haven't worked on their trauma first and gotten them in a place to where they can even hear that, it doesn't work. And so do you kind of want to explain?
Yeah. So I think what's helpful for people to know, as Elena was saying, is kind of what makes us different. And then I'd like to share just a little bit of our outcomes, because I think that really speaks to the work we're doing.
Absolutely.
Again, what makes us different is we are a program first, housing second, but even within that, the person comes before the program. And so what we mean by that is every single person is individualized for them. What we tend to do in our society is we label, right? Homelessness, foster care, sex trafficking, addiction. And what's interesting is when you get down to an individual who's been through foster care and they're home and they become homeless, they can experience all of those things, right? So now, instead of putting a label and just fixing this one thing, we're actually trying to see people as a whole person and saying, what does this individual need outside of what even the program offers to meet them in their uniqueness and their wholeness? And so that's something we really, really do. There's times that for the trauma-informed part of it, we will do things because that one individual needs it, and it's not something we do for everybody else. We really want to meet people where they're at. We, as Elena said, we work on calming the nervous system. We work on creating new neural pathways, which means we're showing individuals their competencies and strengths. A lot of what happens in trauma and in our society is we label things as good and bad, right and wrong. Your behavior is bad, your behavior is not correct. And when you're really doing trauma work, you're saying your body and brain is responding exactly how it's supposed to be. Now, my job as the coach, or Elena's job as the coach, is to be non-reactive to how they're responding and to stay calm and allow them to regulate so that we're not doing work in a dysregulated state. It's really important for our health to not be dysregulated. There's a lot of studies linked with autoimmune diseases, with different comorbidities that actually go back to trauma. And we're seeing that with our kids. A lot of our kids get diagnosed with different comorbidities. We calm their nervous system. We get them to a certain place. They test completely different. Some of our current outcomes, every youth that comes in, the day one that they come in, we do a generalized anxiety disorder quiz. Every single one of them scores severe anxiety. Mm-hmm. We're not against outside professional, psychiatry or medication, but we actually work on calming nervous system first, unless we believe they're an endangerment to themselves or others. Every single one of our youth within 1 to 3 months, max 6 months, all score mild to normal on their GAD score with no medication. And that's all from calming their nervous system. So kids that lived with anxiety their whole lives are no longer feeling anxiety, and they're functioning completely different. All of our kids within 1 month to 6 months at the max are off all substances. So you're not allowed to use anything that would numb here, and outside drugs, recreational. And kids that have had a drug problem their whole lives, they come in and they stay clean. And part of that's just giving them, again, the tools to get out, to empower. That's a big thing we do here, is we empower. It's not helpful if they think we're the reason they're getting better. So how do we create sustainable tools that don't cost anything when they leave here, or cost very little? So accessible tools to have the change in their life continuously, despite being at Foster 360.
I love what you said about empowerment. And that's where we are so aligned with the work that we're doing at Optimize and the work that you guys are doing at Foster 360. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that's great information. And people have a much better idea of the type of work that you're doing. It's not just housing and life skills and prepping people for success in the outside world, but it's like, hey, if we're going to actually get to an area where you're independent, empowered, and successful, we have to address the big elephant in the room, which is the trauma. We have to work through that. We have to develop skills We have to learn how to be vulnerable. We have to do all of those things that are necessary. Otherwise, we're not going to have the outcomes, which is probably why maybe some of the other programs that exist out there don't have the success that they would like to have. Elena, I know you were going to add something.
Oh, I was going to say, so in short, our program is an 18 to 24 month program. There's some young adults who will leave before that. There's some that might stay longer. But our whole goal is for them to never be homeless again or ever past our program or housing insecure. And so what we were saying is all the things that we kind of look at, and kind of each plan is going to be a little bit different. And we'll explain that a little later. But what is it that these young adults really have to accomplish where we feel that they're empowered enough to leave here knowing that they're going to be okay for the rest of their lives? And that's essentially what the program is. And it's to make real sustainable change and to break those cycles of poverty, of abuse, neglect, of abuse, and
generational cycles, right? Like it's not just about staying home, not being homeless, but how do they, when they have kids, their kids don't end up in foster care because they're, replicating the same patterns that their parents did. And all of that's inner work, right? That's not to do with the outside world. That's our inside world.
We learn so much from when we're kids and what we observe. I was doing some research not that long ago, and there was a gentleman talking about brainwave states and how our brainwave states are in lower frequencies when we're young. And when you're in those lower frequencies, your brain is just ultra suggestible. So we're basically like sponges, and we're taking in all of the information from our environment, how mom treats dad, how dad treats mom, whether dad's absent, whether mom's absent, whether there's abuse in the home. All of these things we're observing and we're taking in, and those are creating a lot of our programming for life. And then a lot of times as adults, right, we're trying to rewire, shed a lot of those programs that don't serve us, or sometimes people maybe never do that work and they'll live out their entire life with those same programs. And as we start to get older, the frequency of the brain actually starts to increase, where it's more alpha waves. And then what you guys mentioned, which is those high beta brain waves, which is a very high frequency, which is the frequency of fight or flight, the high beta brain waves. And that's when all of your attention is external and you're actually not suggestible at all. So, people who are trying to give somebody who's in a fight or flight mode some sort of advice of changing a behavior, their just suggestibility is not there for them to actually process that and implement that or make the great change that, can really lead them down a different path. So you guys have a lot of responsibility because you're working with people who are a little bit older, and they've probably developed, right, their own patterns, and they're coming probably from a bad situation because of the trauma, and being homeless has got to be extremely challenging, especially here in Arizona with the heat, and the summers here are really brutal. Okay. And so what are some of the tools and techniques that you work with that have shown the greatest results that you guys are doing at the Foster 360 campus?
Well, to start, we will say optimize.
Yes.
Something we'd love to share with this community is we always joke, we're like, man, if we just knew one session with Michael and Jesse would have this outcome, we would have done it a long time ago, right? But optimize, we have definitely seen with cold plunge and the heat, it just does something for these kids. What they'll tell us too is they'll say, I didn't know I could face my fears in real time. And that's really powerful for people who've been through trauma and especially when you haven't gotten the tools to move through that yet, because your whole brain is telling you to stay safe. And so you're going to do everything you can to not even face things that might seem hard. And so for our kids to show up and do that, and then what it does in their body, a lot of kids before they've calmed their nervous system, because we bring kids in from different stages of where they're at in their plan here, they'll say, that's the quietest my mind, body, and spirit have felt at 21 years was at 2 minutes in that cold water. And that's really been powerful. And then after we do a session on optimize, we have a lot of emotional release later that day. And that's another thing with the population we work with. They've been told feelings or emotions because of how they were raised and how their family was parenting that creates weakness and that you can't do that. And so they're storing all these emotions that don't serve them and are actually creating more of a wall protection around them. And so the fact that they have this emotional release, whether they want to or not, we just see them build that confidence and they sleep better, they feel more relaxed, and it lingers on more and more. It also, when they do the optimize, it helps them trust other techniques that we do because they're like, if I can feel calm, then I want to try that because now they understand what calm feels. So that's been super powerful. Breathwork is a big one for us. We do tons of breath work. We do tons of meditation and mindfulness. It's really important. The kids, they always say that they feel calm after doing that. And then it's a tool that they can use on their own. So again, a lot of our young adults will come in that have severe anxiety and panic attacks, and they're now reporting to us that they're not having them. And it would, in the beginning, they'll call us a lot to do a breathwork session over the phone in the moment. And then pretty soon they don't call anymore. And it's because they trust how they're leading their own breath work.
They have the tools.
We definitely do. Yeah, we've done trauma yoga here, and we're going to actually continue with that. That's been a huge thing for them. And then we do a lot of capacity building and strength building. And what just in a shorter version of that is when they look at behaviors they've used to survive, a lot of the world will tell them those are bad behaviors, don't do it. And what trauma-informed care actually does is shows you your strength in it and how you can actually use it to build health. And so that's the rewiring. And that's been really effective because all the youth realize they don't have to learn a new skill. They just have to channel it differently. And then do you want to talk about the fitness and the nutrition?
Sure.
Dude, that's got to be a big piece of it too, because if you grew up in a household with bad nutrition and you're feeding yourself, that energy, that plays a big role just not on physical health, but emotional and mental as well. So yeah, I would love to hear more about your collaboration with the students. Is that the right term for them? How do you guys refer to them?
So we found, I know we've
we're still kind of bouncing around.
A term that's kind of out in the community, even at a federal level, is youth. Even though they're 18, it's at 18 to 24. So sometimes we call them our youth that we work with, youth or young adults. But another thing about Optimize is really getting their brain and body to work together. And I know that's something that we really work on with them as well. And that's a perfect situation for that because a lot of them are not connected to their bodies how they should be. And we see that a lot with trauma as well.
Pulling them back into the present.
Yeah. So it really is. It's such a great mirror of what we're doing and what we can do with you guys. And so it really is a perfect pairing. And so Sommer really, as she's talking, I always like to say how she came to us because I didn't even know we had a position because I was really the first full-time Foster 360 person who got paid full-time, and we didn't even really have the money, but she came to us and we just fell in love with her. And she really changed Foster 360, like I said, and bringing all these strategies and really helping.
We changed it because
well, my background's different. So my background is work in education. I worked with a lot of youth workforces, so the federal grants, and obviously health is my background. But that's why we always call it such a great marriage is I understand trauma. I understand how it affects your brain, and I can talk all about the facts all day long. But I don't have the comfort that Sommer has in really working with the young adults in such a way to get them to the place that they need to get to. I work with them as a coach in another way, the ways that I've learned. And there's not a resource I couldn't help them with. So those are my strengths. But yes, so Optimize, again, all the things that you guys are looking at as mind and body and health all around is exactly what we're talking to them about. Have we perfected it yet? No. But if you can think about even the things that they're eating. So if their insulin levels, right? If they're just eating sugar and their insulin level goes up and then it crashes, how are you going to feel? If you're already kind of manic or a cranky person, it's definitely all that stuff plays a big part of it. What we're eating is, and that does not do well for our young adults.
Can you talk a little bit about the mindset work you do with our youth about exercise in general? Because what society does with exercise and how you've really changed it in a different mindset approach for us.
Sure. I think obviously with social media, everyone's watching all these or even me, if you watch me, I ran marathons and I was a world athlete, but that's not what you need to do to be healthy. You just need to move around more, eat a little bit better. And it really should just be something that we can all do. So it's really just about, okay, if you want to get into health, why don't you just start with walking or walk up and down your stairs, do some stretching. And so just really talking about that there really has to be a place to start, and you don't have to run a marathon to be healthy, that it's really just the little things and the little changes. And so that's what we really do with them, because I think a lot of them are really nervous or think that they should be able to run on a treadmill for an hour. And that's not the case. You start with 5 minutes and you should be proud of yourself for that. So we really talk about that a lot with them.
Yeah, it's really practical.
Yes.
It's a really practical part, because you're right. It can be a big mountain if you are watching what other people are doing on Instagram and you're all these different workouts and kettlebell workouts and people look a certain way. It's a lot of pressure. But just those simple things of, all right, let's just start with moving your body every day and walking or stretching. And then from there, we can go to hiking. And then from hiking, we can go to, maybe running and all these other things that you can add, that really what the body needs, right? Body needs to move. I mean, we spend a lot of time sitting, we spend a lot of time in front of computers, and the youth, the younger generation, it's even more difficult because I didn't grow up with, iPhones and computers. I didn't get my first computer actually until I think my first computer I didn't get until I was about 26 or 27 years old. If that's pretty crazy. I know. My first cell phone I think was at 21 years old. So most of our time it was pay phones and being outside and playing. Although I did play a lot of video games, I will admit to that. So now you guys have formed this amazing marriage. You both have different strengths that you get to bring to the youth. You are implementing all of these kind of new techniques, I would say, because breathwork is not something, it's super old. It's really ancient, actually. But I felt like it disappeared for a long time, and now it's back, right? Most of the breathwork practices are rooted in Eastern philosophy, come from India and Asia, and different types of pranayama and different types of breathing modalities. I know Holly, who is also a friend and a member of Optimize, and she had studied in India, and I know she brings a lot of unique breath work into the work that you guys are doing at Foster 360. So what are some of the things that really stand out that are game changers for the individuals that you guys are serving? Is it the breathing activities? I would imagine that meditation's got to be really difficult. If you would have asked me to meditate at the age of 17, when I was going through some of the worst parts of myself, I would have said, no way. I would have sat there, maybe just fidgeted around and just probably counted down the seconds until we were done with our meditation so I can go about my day. That's got to be something that's really difficult to implement right away. Maybe that's something that comes with time or lots of practice. What are some of the things that work extremely fast and quick that you've been able to utilize today?
Yeah, I mean, it really is breath work. We do different types, and Holly has been really integral in our process as well, because I've done breath work in other settings, and there's a certain way I've done it in different modalities. And then I studied with Holly to get even a more expansive of the things that, that she knows. What we do know is their brains are going, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we get them to be present and to calm their nervous system? So, and also, how do you teach people to unlock their truth, right? So one of the things we actually use in our breath work is guided, in the sense of sometimes we guide them through a breath work session of just breathing nice and slow in through the nose, out through the mouth, have them come into their body, notice where there's tension, allow things to move away that don't serve. And then we paint a safe place for them. What's a safe place? Because with trauma, you have to build trust. So there has to be modalities that we want to use, but we have to get them to trust us to use those modalities. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, we start to just put the power back to them, right? Which is empowerment. So we have them paint a safe place in their mind, and what do they see in that place? And we're just telling them to breathe in and out, eyes closed. And then we ask them questions like, what do you need more of today? And just sit with this as we breathe and we walk them through it. Or what does love want you to know today? That's a really big question we ask them. And what's so beautiful is after those types of breathwork sessions, the youth always come back with answers. And they say, I didn't know I knew this the whole time. So not only are they calming and they're practicing a technique that they might not have trusted before, but now they're unlocking things in themselves mentally. Once we get them to trust us in the breath work by doing that, then we start doing different types of breath work, the humming breath, the nostril changing, speeding up, slowing down. We also add body movement into it,
more
laying on the ground.
Techniques.
Moving your legs side to side, because that's, again, what you were talking about, movement. And that's the beautiful thing Elena's done with the mindset work around exercise and body movement is what we know in trauma is movement is what helps move it out of our body too, right? It's not just all in our brain. It's definitely getting it through our physical being. And so we do different things, hip openers, just things that are going to release for them. And they're going to have this positive body experience. Not one youth that we've used breathwork on hasn't seen it work for them. And it's free. This is what's so amazing about it is you don't have to go pay somebody to do this. Like you learn it and you're empowered. And now you have the tools you need to not only feel better, but to start to see a change even in your mind.
And forever.
That's been one of our biggest game changers. And then just learning, the best thing we do is what modality of breath work, because there's tons, as you know, which ones do they need in these times? And then getting them to do those ones. And they're all different for different reasons of what you want to do. But yeah, it's been our number one game changer.
But I would say the thing to really look at that makes a difference, obviously we're a program, they're here with us, so it's different for us, but they have to feel safe and they have to trust us before any of those things can even happen. Just like you were saying, right? Like if they're in that brain of like fight or flight, it's not going to work with them. So that really is the first part is that relationship that we have with them and just showing up for them. And if we say we're going to do something, like it has to be done, And so I know Sommer and myself have gone back to them and in that moment of like, okay, well, is there a reason you can't trust me? Have I shown up every time I've said I'm going to show up? Have I always helped you when I said I was going to help you? And those things are, it's really valuable. There's not really one without the other for what we're doing is that we have to have that safety first before those things can work.
And just from my observation working with your group, you guys are doing such amazing work because when I first got involved, I didn't know what to expect. I knew that.
Us either.
I was like, okay, I'm not sure what to expect. I didn't have a good grasp on the audience, like what was the audience going to be like? What are some things that I should talk about? What are some things I shouldn't talk about? And how their experience is going to be with cold water therapy, because everybody reacts very differently to cold water therapy. Some people go in and they drop right in. They're able to go into kind of a calm meditative state. And some people, freak out and kind of go into kind of a mini panic attack. And my first workshop that I did with you guys, we started off, so we do these private group sessions where we'll close down Optimize for a few hours. We take small groups in, we do sharing so they get to know us better and create some connection. And, it's an opportunity for us to be vulnerable. And then we'll do some sort of breathing exercise or meditation or combination of the two. And then from there, we'll go through a full circuit of different therapies, from compression therapy to infrared sauna to cold water therapy with coaching, back into, say, warm water therapies, what we call contrast therapy, and then do a couple of rounds of both cold and hot. And then usually by then, the 2 hours is done. And we've done these private groups with Foster 360. And I was amazed not only by their ability to do cold water therapy so calmly and, find that kind of meditative state that essentially we're teaching, but how willing they were to be vulnerable in the sharing aspect. We went around the room and we talked and we asked about obstacles or their life, and different questions that we had to create, some connection and communication. And they were all so vulnerable. They were all so like self-aware. Like that's something that you don't see all the time. People aren't necessarily so aware of the things that are holding them back in life, or so willing to address them publicly in front of strangers. And that was one thing I noticed right away. And that was pretty amazing. And usually when you have that sort of conversation early on in the private group, that translates typically to a really good session because people are letting their guard down. They're not walking in there or going about the private group with their guards up. So that was really amazing. And I just wanted to share that because that was my first experience. And then obviously we did it again and we duplicated it. And it was really the same level of sharing and just the same types of techniques that we used for the cold water therapy. Everyone had such good outcomes. And we were doing 2 or 3 minutes and everyone was like nailing 2 or 3 minutes. Like nobody was getting out early. Everyone was like, I'm in. They went through the kind of the first 30 seconds of suffering. They rode through that and then they found that calm and still kind of place. What I don't get to see is the aftermath when they leave later on that evening that you guys get to see. So I just wanted to share that and pass it over to you guys to give some feedback on how the cold water therapy and the group settings have maybe changed things for the better for them and how exactly you feel like those things are working.
Yeah, I mean, like cold plunge has been a game changer for our kids. It's definitely one of those things of we could be working with them for 2 weeks on something. They go in cold plunge and all of a sudden now they're ready to face it after they've experienced cold plunge therapy. The beautiful thing about it, and this is what the kids always share with us or the youth, is that they could not believe that they could face a really big fear. I mean, we've had kids who literally are afraid of water, just in general, like take the cold part out of it and just water. And we, as you know, we don't force anyone to do it, but they all watch their peers. And that's what's so beautiful about collective healing as a community is you really can inspire and encourage each other, to have the strength. You can give others strength, right? And so that's really what we also love about Optimize is you've built it around this very beautiful collective healing. And it's something that we take into our community now because we see it through you guys. All of them say that they felt the calmest they felt, in 2 minutes. For them, it felt like everything just disappeared. They all say that. It feels like everything just disappeared and that I was going to be okay. And that tells me, this is what they say, that tells me I am going to be okay. And so it's this beautiful practice that allows them to do something really hard in real time and for them to then see the benefits. After cold plunge, we always have emotional releases. Things come up that they never wanted to talk about before. And we always say, because trauma informed is you don't force people to share their stories, but they say, no, I got to get this out. That's what I'm realizing. I need to talk now. And that always happens after a cold plunge session. What else?
Well, I would just say I'm going to go along with everything that you're saying, of course. But the thing is, we all know the benefit, or us, right? We know the benefits of going consistently and going over time to the body. But even just if they go one time to have that feeling of what it feels like to be calm, they can always come back to that, right? Like through different modalities. And so that's really powerful. It is such an empowerment for them to be the ones responsible for making them get in that state. And you don't know what you don't know. They've never known maybe what that feeling feels like. So for it to happen, really, I mean, it changes lives for the better. And so that's what, I know it's not magic. I know it's all science, but I like to say, I think it's a little bit of magic to see.
There's it feels mystical in a beautiful way. And
it works
the other
fast.
And the other thing that we want to share about that is, there are modalities we try with our kids that they don't want. Not one of our youth has come out of Optimize not wanting to do it or go back. If anything, they're constantly, when are we doing that? When are we doing that? And, again, that goes, not only is it the place, but it's a testimony to you, Michael, and Jesse, and,
Holly.
and Holly. Yeah. Just the environment you guys create and why you created Optimize. I mean, sure, there's all these, it's good to have these health benefits, but you guys are tying in the emotional piece to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge thing for trauma, is that it's not just about the physical being, but it's our mental and emotional being. And you found a way to really marry that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a huge benefit to our kids. It's why they never reject it. We have never had a kid reject Optimize, and that says a lot. They've rejected plenty of things from us.
Yeah, it looks like we always
used
have good
to that.
attendance. We have good attendance every time we do the private group sessions. And I even know the last time we did one, there was someone that couldn't stay for the full session because she had to go to work, but she still wanted to come to at least participate in, say, the first half of it. And that meant a lot to us.
Yeah. No, it's been great, and I'm excited to see all the fruits from it, and just how
we can evolve it, like our partnership with you
mm-hmm.
guys.
Great. So what are some of the things that happen? So I would love to talk about the city of Phoenix. I would love to talk about like what's happening out there, some of the obstacles that kids face today. And you talked a lot about homelessness. You talked a little bit, or you mentioned sex trafficking. You
mm-hmm.
talked about, obviously, drug abuse, which with fentanyl, I mean, it is really a pandemic in its own. So what do you guys have learned through your one-on-ones and group therapy that you guys have done with the different youth who come to you? What are some of the issues in our society today that we're facing? And obviously you guys are like angels that you're there to support a handful of kids really in this
they
process.
don't think we're angels, but
but they will see that because you are providing them with so much care, not only from the basic needs, right? That's a nice place to stay, a community, bathroom, air conditioning, all of those like essential things that are just so important, rather than living on the street or living out of your car or living in a bad situation in someone's house that's, where it's just bad things going on there. So you're removing them from all of that. And then you're doing all this extra work to like get to know them personally, to work through their trauma, to teach them life skills, to teach them how to eat right, all the things that maybe didn't learn from, their parents. So you guys are filling so many different roles. But what's going on in society? What are some of the things that you're seeing that maybe aren't talked about enough?
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Sure. So I know I didn't get to, but my background, so I worked with aging out foster youth before coming to Foster 360. I started my own program at the YMCA, and actually I felt like I was a program manager for Foster 360 before even coming over. I always helped out. But I also did a lot in the community in other ways for young adults. And again, I grew up here. I was born down the street from where we're at right now. And had a wonderful family, was in the community. But it wasn't until I started working in social work that I realized in Arizona, our numbers are horrific and dismal for taking care of our young adults and our youth. Like opportunity youth is a big word, and it means young adults from 16 to 24 who are out of work and out of school. The amount of opportunity youth that Arizona has way surpasses any other state in the nation. And that's horrible, right? Our foster numbers are horrible. We've already talked about those. And we're just, as a community, we're not taking care of our own. Like she said, how can you not, pay attention to what's going on in your own backyard? And I wasn't paying attention. I mean, I thought I did love helping people always, but I had no idea how bad the numbers were. And so even right in Arizona or in Maricopa County, 35%. So homelessness has gone up 35% in 1 year, in the last year. So we have a lot of people out there in need, and there just really isn't enough out there to take care of them. And the young adults, I think probably like 5% of foster graduate from high school? Mm-hmm. It's something crazy. It's a really low percentage. Don't quote me on that, but I do know only 3% that go on to college. 3% of the aging out foster youth will finish some type of post-secondary. So whether that's a certificate, 2-year or 4-year. So it's really low numbers. A huge percentage of those young adults will end up in jail, right? will become pregnant before the age of 21. What's the percentage of sex trafficking? I think it's like 33% of homeless youth will end up in sex trafficking.
Well, and then that's all the stuff we semi hear about, right? I think the things when we think about what's going on with our youth, is everything Elena said, but it's all the things that are yet not discovered. One of the things we've discovered is a lot of our kids have experienced domestic violence, which then equates to a brain injury. Currently, that's not being discovered in foster care. It's actually a partnership that we've now created with Barrow Neurological Institute to start addressing brain injuries for our kids.
Wow.
So, you have domestic violence. I mean, and they're still experiencing this. Once they're out of the system, they're going to go back to familiarity, and they're dealing with just normal, also just teenager stuff, bullying online, not feeling good enough, not having the resources.
Of course.
Also, I think what the community doesn't know is the barriers that are truly put in for place for people who do not have privilege.
The system isn't made for young adults who face foster care.
It's just not made for people who don't have privilege in general. Mm-hmm. Like for our kids to get food stamps, right? They have no jobs at this point when they come to us, most of them. For that, they're homeless, right? So there's no computer. They might have a phone, but it may or may not be turned on. They don't have a way to print things. This is the stuff that they want. We want your last 2 pay stubs. We want a letter from somebody verifying where you live. We want this document and this document, and a letter from your last employer that you don't work there anymore.
Wow, it's a lot of work.
They don't have a computer. They don't remember where they're in trauma. Sometimes they don't even remember. It could have been 3 years ago they had that job. And so how do they even and then once they get through those barriers, and this is the easiest one we can talk about, once they get through those barriers, what happens when they get called for an interview and their phone shut off? So now they get denied and now they can't even get food, right?
But the food stamps it's even once you've done all the things you've done that are not easy, it's still, and then you wait another 8 weeks before you even actually get the food stamps.
So it's just all these systems. One time we had a youth who, most of our youth come in, they don't have any vital documents because someone in their family had it. And then possibly if they were in kinship or foster care, that adult might have had it, but no one's making sure the kids get it back, right?
The birth certificate, the identification.
Social security. What can you do without any of those things, right?
Yep.
So we had a young adult that had no social security card. Well, you need a birth certificate for that. In order to get your driver's license, you need this. In order to get your birth certificate, you need a state ID.
Wow.
But how can I get a state ID if I don't have a birth certificate to then get my social security card?
Or money to pay for any of it.
Yeah, add the monetary point. Or the rides, right? Like, how are they getting around?
Yeah.
And so it's all of that, right? And then when you're in trauma, how do you advocate? So we take this young adult in, and the vital document said, sorry, if you don't have one of those IDs, we can't give you a birth certificate. So Elena and I, asked to meet with someone and explain the situation. And then they told us a way you can do it. These young adults aren't going to be able to do it because they're in trauma.
There's a lot of barriers.
People have not shown them how to advocate for themselves.
I mean, that's stressful just for me to go through that, to go through the DMV and the government systems and all the different processes to get your birth certificate. And it's probably 10 times worse if you absolutely need that and you're on the street and you just don't have the resources, right? The ride, the phone, the money to pay and support all these things. So yeah, that's a real challenge. I want to know more about the child sex trafficking in general. Like, how do those things come about? Is it really because they don't necessarily have money and then people are coming into the picture like, hey, I can help you to get money? Is that how that sort of funnel works with young men and women?
Ways, but I've actually seen it. So I worked at the Maryville YMCA, which is not the greatest area. And so we'd have young adults who we'd have to go pick up around there, or they come to meet us. And they're pretty brazen, the people in sex trafficking. Like I saw multiple times people try to pull my young adults over. Like they would open the door and they'd be really rude and try to get the young adults in. Wow. And so that's happening all over. Like, and they do it daytime. They're not even like nervous about it, which is just so crazy. So it's happening all over. They're not nervous about anything. Obviously they're getting away with stuff. But a lot of foster are like, when they're even younger than 18, they run away, right? Because they just want to get out. And so they're very vulnerable. So the people in sex trafficking, they go after the foster youth.
I think,
sure.
And I think what the part of sex trafficking that's evolved that no one's talking about is through social media. Mm-hmm. So there'll be individuals, whether they're male or female, and this actually happened to one of our kids, very attractive. They start DMing, right? Kids, and they start having them come over. And then what they do is they see this really cool apartment or house, and the person starts to buy them stuff. And then eventually that person is putting them through sex trafficking. And that's one of the ways that people aren't talking about.
That's how they lure them in, through social media.
Yep.
Solicitation. Drugs, obviously, big obstacle as well. Pretty easy to get them these days. Marijuana is everywhere. It's legal now, so it's everywhere. You have fentanyl, which is seems like a newer problem, a big problem. It reminds me very much of the 80s and crack cocaine and types of things that we were seeing. I don't know how it was here in Arizona, but I grew up in Queens, New York, and crack cocaine was obviously a big obstacle in inner city New York. So what are some of the obstacles with drugs and detox and kind of creating new habits outside of numbing? How do you guys accomplish that? That's a big obstacle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we are not, I'm going to be honest, that's not really our field of expertise. We see it, but our program, we do drug tests right away. So it's usually, we do have young adults who test positive for marijuana, of course, and we work with them, but it's just, to live here, you can't be on those things. So it's kind of, we don't deal with it that much.
Well, we do in the beginning when they are someone who reportedly tells us that they use marijuana to numb. So a lot of what our kids do is they use more than the suggested amount of like a gummy or a vape that has marijuana. And so right away, that's where we have to show them some tools, like right away with breath work and stuff like that, to start to show them how they can calm because they just want to do it as soon as they feel anxious.
Yeah,
that's when they want to do it.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's also why we don't put a lot of pressure on them when they first come in. We do what's called a rest period, because the more outside pressure they have, the more they're going to seek a substance to numb. It's the same with alcohol for them, right? They will go out and just drink a bunch, and they're not allowed to drink here, but we talk about those things, and we know that the techniques are working because they do get random drug tests, and quite a few of them will tell us that they were overly dependent on it before entering the program. A lot of them will still test positive for about the first 2 months, but after that, they start to test clean.
And it's helping them with sleep hygiene is a huge one as well. And just like she said, just different modalities to show them that drugs are not the only thing that they can use to feel better. And so,
just no one's shown them, right? Yeah. So if someone tells you, hey, this will make you feel better, and it does,
you'll use it.
That's what they're going to go for.
Yeah, you'll put it into action. Now, what are some good success stories of someone coming in, obviously working through a variety of different problems, staying with you guys for a period of time, learning those life skills, learning the discipline, better eating habits, better sleep habits, better wake up and kind of be productive habits? How does that transition into a successful, transition out into the community?
Yeah, and we call them little miracles. I feel like we see little miracles all the time. And Sommer does such a great job of storytelling. So I know you've definitely had a lot.
We have had a lot, but I think you should share about the individual who came to us in their car.
Oh, sure. So one of the young adults we work with who actually was living out of her car, if you met her, especially even at the beginning, she actually was able to get a job right away, and is seemingly very intelligent and really sweet. And so you would think that there really wasn't an issue, that she was a high performing young individual. But in our program, we really found that she really struggled with anxiety, and it was debilitating. So even though she was doing well in different areas, it didn't always last, right? And that's what we always say, of course, to check off, we can get this kid a job for a day, or they can start education, but that's not the point. It's really allowing them to be fruitful and to last and to do well, in school and at work. And so So for her, she came to us and she was doing all these things, and we were really proud of her. But we saw that anxiety was really debilitating her for education and different things. And so Sommer really worked with her on giving her tools. And she's become a different person. I mean, she's going to school right now and working 2 different internships, and she's fine. Like, and she notices the difference in herself, and she's able to use those tools. And so she's really, we know.
And she's speaking up for herself.
Yes.
She used to not do that, like tell people, hey, that's a boundary for me.
One of the funny things, because I feel like there are kids, right? Like, how can we not feel that way? Like, we have a bunch of kids. But there was a time where she wanted to move out because her friends were getting a house and they were all going to pay rent. And so she came to us. She was so nervous to talk to us. And she was just like, hey, I'm going to move out. I'm going to live with my friends. And, you know, we just kind of went over knowing that she is going to make whatever decision she wanted to make. But we're just like, okay, well, like, have you worked on A, B, and C? Like, are you like, what happens when you can't pay rent? Like, we really don't want you to end up back on the street. And like, you're doing so well here. And we just had all, like, I say, the motherly talk with her of like, we really care for her and we really want to see her do well. But there's just some things she still needed to work on before leaving here. And so she actually was like, you know what? I'm going to stay. And that for us, like, that was a huge miracle for like a 21-year-old to like decide to stay in a program that's maybe, you know, not so cool, like with all your friends.
I mean, we're cool.
Yeah. But that was awesome. And we were so happy. And it's a lot of things, right? Because she also like sought out, like, she is a person who reads a lot of self-help books or which are not bad. They're not bad at all, but she just wasn't in a place to.
She wasn't doing
really
the inner work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and she took a class before she started really working on the trauma piece, and she quit it because she wasn't doing well in it. Now she's like getting an A in her class and she's excelling. She's managing her schedule. I know that sounds so little, but it's so big for these guys to manage their schedule. She literally says now, hold on, I need to check my schedule and I'll let you know if I'm free. Nice. That's huge.
Yeah. And they're all, it's all
nice to have a schedule, right? Like, you have stuff going on.
To make a calendar, and that how easy it is to just tell people. And that was really what we told her. Like, okay, when someone asks you if you're available, what you can do is just say, you know what, give me 5 minutes. I need to look at my calendar first, or I'll get back to you. And it was so funny that, because it's such an easy thing for us to do because we do it all the time, but they just don't think that way. And
and they've been raised in a way that they always had to please the person in front of them to not get the abuse or to not get kicked out of the program. So they're wired, their trauma's wired them to keep them safe by just telling us what we want, what they think we want to hear. And so that empowerment again, and advocating and showing them that, we know it's working when they start to tell us no. We don't love it, right?
Those are healthy habits. Boundaries.
So she went from high, right, of having a job she had forever to like quitting that job, to getting another job that she quit right away, to quitting school that she was in, to really being successful. Like, she's a real go-getter. So she's like, I'm working on my career. So she's doing the 2 internships that she's getting paid for, doing really well in school and loving it. And she's just like a happier person. Like, she just feels good
and very calm. Like, she comes in calm and she will say things like, I'll think about that and get back to you.
Yeah. And we just talked to her also because she is one of the people who's like, I need to make 90,000 and I need to do it in like this amount of time. And so we just
in 3 months.
Yeah. To have like those discussions of like, instead of doing like a time, why don't we start off with like, what are the things I really need to get down? Like, I need to save for this many months where I do it like consecutively. And just like all the like tangible things that you can actually see. And then once you do those, then let's go ahead and set a goal of time. But like, sometimes we're not even in a place. I don't think people realize that. You can't always like, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 1-year plan? Like, that's not always how it works.
Especially with this
even have those.
Yeah.
You tell me what's my 5-year plan. I'm like, I'm not really too sure. I'll get back to you on that. Let me check my calendar.
Well, it's the same with working out to me. It's like, you know, I want to lose 20 pounds. How about you think about, I want to be stronger. I want to be able to do 10 push-ups because right now I can only do 5 push-ups. Like, those are really the type of healthy goals that we should be making for ourselves.
I like that. So I know you guys don't like to really ask for much in support, but I do want to throw the question out there for anyone who's listening, our community at Optimize, or anybody who found this podcast and stumbled upon it and is listening in, how do they, one, learn more about Foster 360 and the work that you ladies are doing? And how can we as a community be of service to your guys' mission?
Funny that you ask. we have our annual fundraiser that actually starts on Monday. It's through Thrive, which is through Community Thrives through
Arizona Republic.
Mm-hmm. And so it's actually just a link, and it has kind of all the information about what we're doing on it. And you just click on the link, and then there's a place to donate. So we'd love to. I don't know if you could get that out to your people, but it's really our biggest fundraiser of the year. And it's not even so much. Of course, we want to raise a lot of money, but it's about getting the community involved. If we can show that our community is involved and get like the quantity of people we get to be part of it, then we have the possibility of being able to get $100,000 in a grant.
Because it shows the sustainability of our program.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys are able to use that money for all of the resources there, obviously for the housing, for the programs, for all of the basic needs that is required, right, to have a good experience there so that you have good outcomes.
Yeah, and we are privately funded because federal and state funding requires a lot of times for us to provide outcomes right away, like within 30 days, put them to work or school, and we know we can't do that. We can get them there, but our number one goal is to calm and heal the trauma, right? And so we are really reliant on the community support to do the work that we're doing. It costs, just for housing for the kids a year, it costs $100,000.
Wow.
And the kids struggle to even pay that. And we are not a program that kicks someone out because they can't pay their rent. And so all that money goes back into our programming.
Yeah.
Excellent.
The thing is, what it is definitely doing is something good, right? We're helping people with that money. But also, if you look at it in another way, the financial way is, a homeless person actually costs taxpayers about $300,000 a year. And so if we're donating and actually putting into prevention, we're actually saving a lot of money for our community. And that's just talking about money. There's a lot more than that, but that is from a money standpoint, because people are going to donate for different reasons, and that's okay. But
it is mutually flourishing, beneficial.
For all of us.
Yeah,
really,
it's needed. It's required. Those are necessary resources so that you guys can do the work that you're doing. And you guys are dedicated to this full time. You're putting all of your energy, your efforts, your personal time. I'm sure you're getting calls on weekends, all of these experiences, right? Because you're working with people, and people are complicated, right? We're definitely complicated. There's a lot to the situation. So you guys are doing so much work, from trauma to the basic needs, to the physical fitness, to lifestyle and life skills that are necessary and needed to be independent. And being independent is very difficult today, because just look at the cost of rent, right? If you look at the Phoenix metropolitan area, especially over the last 2 years, just to say, just go get your own apartment and get a job. And then you're making minimum wage, and then you're trying to get an apartment that's relatively close to your job. Very difficult thing to do today. I'm noticing a lot of things change here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm sure in many other parts of the country as well. Growing up in New York, it was very common for people to live at home for long periods of time, mainly because the cost of living in New York is very high, and people couldn't afford $2,500, $3,000 rent for a tiny little studio apartment, which is really common in places like Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and all the areas where I used to hang out. So it was very common for people to live at home longer into their years before they were able to save up enough money or have a good enough job to pay rent or buy a house, which was near impossible, because even a standard house that needed work was, $600,000, $700,000. And what was the other option? Go live in a really bad neighborhood and then have to be concerned about getting robbed every day. So Phoenix is starting to become that. And I'm noticing it's more and more difficult to be able to move out and get an apartment and live affordably. So that's a bigger obstacle for you guys, because you're ultimately this temporary place for them to transition out and have good outcomes and be empowered and self-sustainable and on the road to success. And that's challenging for everybody involved, no less the story and history from, how they were raised and the things that they saw and faced and the type of abuse that they had to be involved in, that as human beings, we carry that stuff with us well into life. And you're teaching them such important skills on how to let stuff go and feel lighter, and how to have tools that last forever and how to utilize these tools. I mean, this type of training is really thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, people are going on retreats to learn these things and spending big bucks on how to meditate, how to let things go, how to do breath work, how to do cold water therapy, and all of these other biohacking kind of skills that you guys are also sharing with them. And you're providing all of those assets. So it's really amazing the work that you're doing. And that's why I was so excited to do this podcast, this conversation with you, because although people in our community are getting more familiar with you, obviously we had a community event, you guys had an opportunity to talk and share, but we're also posting stuff, of course, but I don't think people really know what Foster 360 is and all the details of the work that you guys are involved in, except for, myself and Jesse and Holly, the people who've been actively involved. So I'm really proud of this conversation to highlight all of the work that you guys have both stepped up to do at this point in your life. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. And I'm happy to be a friend. I'm happy to be involved and happy to be a service to your mission. And I plan on doing even more stuff with you guys outside of just the 2-hour private group workshops that we've been doing at Optimize, just spending some quality time with you and the youth. And once the weather changes a little bit, maybe some outdoor activities, some hiking, some stuff out in nature that we can do, which I look forward to. So that link that you guys mentioned, I will make sure that's in the show notes. So if you're listening, you want to learn more about Foster 360, please click on the link. You have an opportunity to learn more about the program and also donate. And you obviously know where that money is going in the mission that it is serving. And I would just like to pass it over to you. Any kind of final statements, anything else that you want to share? It's all yours.
I mean, there's so much, but we really wanted to just say thank you to you as well. You and Jesse really have created such a beautiful community. All the things you're doing are just amazing and really do help people. But on top of that, the community that you have, there's not a time that we step into an Optimize where we don't find people with a heart of service. Like, people are always so willing to help. And I'm always going to say, like, that's you guys. You guys really created that, a place where people, want to help and be part of the community. And so I hope you know that. And we're so proud to be your friends. And we're going to take all the things you're saying, because we want all of you, Michael and Jesse. And it's just, we can, that's what I'm saying. We can do it as a community. We're going to get to a better place. And we're laying all our seeds down, like we're getting there. And it's just so exciting to do it together.
Awesome. Sommer, any final words? Thanks, Elena, for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I just echo everything Elena shared. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is, we've talked about Holly and Michael and Jesse and all the ways they do so many things, even outside of Optimize, for our community. And they've poured into us too as leaders. Like, what you guys have taught us has then gone into the fingerprint of the work we do, which is so beautiful. And then every time you guys share about us, we get other individuals from your community that reach out and are a part of doing work here with us. And, it really is paid staff. It's me and Elena, and that's it. And we cannot do this work and be good at all the things, nor should we. And so it's really because of this community that there's collective healing happening, and that what we've seen is just how Optimize not only is there to heal us on a personal level, but it's been a part of healing our youth. And there are not enough words in the English language to really adequately say thank you to you guys.
My pleasure. It's been an honor.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for showing up and doing the work. And we're glad that we can provide a space where you can come and de-stress and connect with yourselves, because it's hard work to be of service in the capacity that you are. And, it's it's a lot, like you said, like we mentioned earlier, the calls, the weekends, the highs and lows of the emotional things that are occurring as people are going through a transformative process. And you guys are a 2-person team. So, yeah, it's not like you have this entire army behind you and all these resources. Like you're doing things at the grassroots level. So we appreciate you. We love having you guys as members. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here to share your story. And we'll make sure that we have the links involved in the details of this post. And yeah, have a great rest of your afternoon. Happy Friday. And I'll see you at the center.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Bye, ladies.